Hi, Matt Stait again here from the Festival of Martial Arts. And today I've got with me Adam Davey. Hi, Adam, how are you?
Morning, Matt. I'm good, thank you.
Excellent, my friend. So we start these things in the same way. I ask for a brief overview of who you are, what you do, for those that may not have heard of you.
Yeah. Well, my name's Adam Davey, obviously. At the moment, I'm a Kapap instructor, Krav Maga. Um, on and off martial artist most of my life. Very eclectic things what I do. I dabbled in most things. Um, Started with the usual martial arts, karate, judo when I was younger. Teenager, I was a lot of real life experience. Never far away from trouble and fights. Gone to Wing Chun for a little while. Done that. Tried to take things from it. Done Tai Chi for a little while. Tried to take things from that. I tend to see something I like and go to try it for myself, see if I can take anything from it. I done Russian Sistema for a little while, trying to understand their way of doing things, their punches. So I tried to take things from that. All the while I was doing Krav, cross training, done a little bit of like Thai boxing, MMA, standard stuff, bringing that into the Krav. Always wanted something a little bit more. Find out Amit Himmelstein. Spent the weekend training with him years ago. Loved it. And then a few more meetings. Managed to join the IKF. Spent time out in Israel. Just loved everything about the IKF, International Kapap Federation. Became an instructor with them. So now I've got a little school in Bristol teaching kind of Krav Maga, Kapap, self-defense. And yeah, that's it. I'm not a lifelong sole martial artist. I've done various things. I've dabbled in most things throughout my life. Like I said, I've got some experience in the street with a bit of trouble and violence and whatnot. So I've always kind of wanted somewhat street based. I've always loved the sports side of things and the grappling and stuff like that. The IKF do a lot of that, which is suits me to the ground.
Yeah, well, that's where the IKF at the moment in its current guise seems to have, it seems to stand different from some of the other CAPAP organizations that are going on, because its basis is essentially, for want of a better word, seems to be a lot of MMA sort of based things within it.
Yeah.
Is that a correct sort of overview?
It is, yeah. I like to call it kind of urban MMA, because it is. And Amit's a full-time MMA coach, got professional fighters in his gym. Obviously, jiu-jitsu and whatnot. He's a world champion wrestler, so he brings all of that into our protocols and our syllabuses, if you like to call it that.
Yeah. So how does that translate to the accusation that's sometimes thrown? Now, bear in mind, the whole point of the festival is to bring people together, not to actually create dissent and my stuff is better than your stuff. It's not about that. But it's an interesting line of thought because, as you know, I mean, we've trained together lots over the years, trained with him myself. The guy is an extraordinary athlete and martial artist, no question about that. And so that brings us back to what I was saying there. So when people sometimes say that sport and street self-defense, let's call it that, there's no crossover, there's no overlap, they're two separate entities. What's your thoughts on that?
Obviously, the sports side of what he teaches is different from the self-defense, but I've never been a believer in it. It's two completely different things. There's things you take from it, things you wouldn't use in self-defense that you could use in sport. That's kind of obvious. But things that get used daily in full competitions, in high-level fights, and works on professional fighters. If you can get half good at some of those, then it's going to work, isn't it? There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So we take things that work in competitions. And we adapt and apply it to the street. We try to there is a difference between sport and street. Obviously, there's things you wouldn't or shouldn't attempt in the street. But I always say if your self-defense fails, you're in a fight. So knowing how to fight is is an important side of self-defense, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, years ago, the mantra for people would be, "Oh, this isn't for against a trained fighter. This is for your man in the street." And
Yeah,
the thing is now, with MMA gyms on every street corner, with the rise of martial arts, it's on every TV program. There's not a hero alive now on a TV screen that doesn't have martial arts skills because it's so prevalent in our society now. I think it's safe to say that the man on the street, your average man on the street now, has a level of skill that they may not have had 15, 20 years ago. So you've got to sort of cater for that. And that sort of, so that brings me along to, where you said about your eclectic kind of training and stuff, and your trips out to Israel and things. So you said that you've sort of you liked the IKF, you decided you were sticking with them, you went out to Israel. How was that?
Oh, amazing, kind of intense 3 weeks. It was actually, I done 3 individual training camps. Like I stayed there for 3 weeks. I'd done all 3 of them back to back. So we had like combat combatives the first week, which was a lot of his instructors and his fight teams. There's a lot of like soldiers, special forces, things like that go into his gym, professional fighters. So the first week was just a lot of hard training with those guys. 6-7 hours on the mats every day. Hard training. Second week we had a team of Germans come over for their camp. So I stayed for that. Me and a friend, Lee Warren. And that was great, meeting a lot of new people, all the Germans, IKF group. So we stayed with them, trained with them for a week. And that was everything from wrestling, Krav Maga, grappling, knives, third party, everything like that. Third week was an English group come over with Adrian Valmon. Spent a week with those lot, which was amazing. So all in all, the 3 weeks was probably the hardest training I've done. It was 3 weeks. I think we had a couple of days off in the 3 weeks. One of our days off, we went to train with Hein Peer, the founder of it. That was one of our days off, was just getting smashed by his team of black belts in his judo school, multi-fight jiu-jitsu in Tel Aviv. So that was an interesting day off. So it was just every day, all day on the mats, training, session after session after session. And I've never done anything like it. I've never done anything like it. It's almost like a fight camp for self-defense people. So you get fighters go on fight camps. And this was kind of what I would say is an intense 3-week fight camp for self-defense instructors.
Yeah, it sounds like an extraordinary experience, and
it was amazing.
Very, very taxing and demanding, both mentally and physically.
Extremely. After the first couple of days, it was hard to roll out of bed. Once you get moving, you kind of free up and carry on, and then you go back, and then you seize up again, and then you get up, do the same again. But that's what we do. I love it.
Yeah, no, great. I mean, that's one of those things, isn't it? It's when you're still young and capable enough to do it, you should absolutely make the most of these opportunities. Now, I wanted to touch on something specifically with regards to the IKF, and I know this isn't IKF alone, but it's something that's talked about a lot, and I'm not sure that it's just for the people that may have heard the phrase but don't fully get it. So I'd like your explanation on this. They talk a lot about protocols.
Yeah.
And so what is a protocol? Why does it matter so much? And why do the IKF insist on using those specifically as a framework for what they do?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I like the IKF is because we haven't got a syllabus as such, but we've got sets of protocols to deal with certain situations. And a protocol is a kind of almost like a step-by-step process of how to deal with a situation. What I find in some of the Krav Maga I was doing was it was always one defense for the last minute, and that was it. There was nothing before that situation became. There was nothing. If it didn't work, it was just kind of one answer to a bad situation. As where a protocol is, there's stages as it goes through the situation. Always obviously try to avoid. Our first thing is always out. Our first protocol is always out. Get out of the situation. Get out of the hold. Get out of whatever's happening. That doesn't always work. So we go down the next protocol, which is we go in. So if we got to go in, if we can't go out, we go in and deal with it. We always seem to have a means of it's either distance or control. So we got to create distance and escape. If we can't do that, we try to gain control. If we can't go in and deal with it, and it's a bad situation, then the next stage would be to take it down to the ground, and deal with it there. The reason protocols are, I believe, are good is because nothing ever works. Nothing ever works the way you think it's going to work. There's never one answer to anything. So we practice to try to go out all the time. That doesn't work. We then immediately stay there and go in to try and deal with it. That doesn't work and it's escalating. Then most of the time it's going to end up in a kind of a hands-on grappling wrestling match anyway. Just self-defense is failing. So then the last protocol would be to go down and deal with it on the ground or escape from it on the ground. The reason is good in my opinion is if you only learn one technique or one escape to a situation and that fails, which it often can, and that's the only thing you practice, you can quite quickly get stuck or unstuck. So there's never one option for us to deal with someone. We don't have loads of options. It's not like 10 options to deal with someone grabbing you. The protocols are set out to give you options at every stage of that situation.
So is this something that you will be showcasing at the festival itself?
Yeah. Obviously most of our stuff can be considered quite advanced. Like a lot of our stuff is control and restraint, which you're not going to learn that in 20 minutes. If you take away with it and you practice it, then yeah. Obviously the first protocol is going out and going in. Going out is easy. You can learn that straight away, which is self-defense for any situation we escape. But the more that starts to fail, the more skills you're going to find yourself needing, really. There's no two ways about it. It's a tough situation, and if you're dealing with another human, it's not as easy as some people like to think.
Yeah, no, okay. Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? But hey, people train for lots of different reasons, and not everybody in martial arts trains to defend themselves in a street fight or what have you. Some people train for fitness, for community, for lots of other things, and and hey, that's all fine as well. So I mean, hopefully the whole point of the festival is that people can come together and they can showcase what they do, and people can just say, oh, I like that, I'll add that into what I do. I have found that to be fun and exciting. I want to learn more about that. And so that's kind of the idea, is that it's a sort of introduction as much as anything else, with a few bolt-ons. Now, one of the other things that we mentioned you coming along with is the Powercube.
Yeah.
So
that's
first,
good.
If you could just quickly give us a very brief overview of what a Powercube is and what you can do with it.
So a Powercube is a tool for measuring impact power. It's a really good tool. It's used by the UFC and their performance institutes. It's not like an arcade punch machine. It's quite an accurate measurement. And like I said, it's used by the Performance Institute to test their fighters. And it's a universal score for all of the devices. So what you score on my Powercube will be able to be compared to UFC fighters' scores, which is quite unique and good.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So there's obviously like the world record hardest recorded punch on a Powercube, which was Francis Ngannou, and it's a score of 130,000 units. The units are measured by the speed of compression and the speed of the impact. So it's like a human force measurement.
Sorry, what's a normal kind of average score, so that we've got a way to figure out the difference between us as mere mortals and
power ranges widely from people. I've had I think 20,000 is all right. Like a score of 20,000 is all right. It's not bad. Obviously, like a knockout can be measured by there's many different ways. You don't need necessarily pure power to create a knockout. So there's loads of factors when it comes into actually delivering that power on someone. But as for creating that power and measuring it, is a really good device. Is really good, and we can measure kind of any kind of strike really. And I call it martial power. I call it martial power for a reason, because it's good to see and test different martial arts and their ways of striking. That's one thing I was always fascinated with, was how different martial arts generate their power, which is why I kind of train various things. I always wanted to understand how they're able to generate the power they do. That's something I was always interested in. Hence why I got a Powercube myself to test these things and see how things work. But the scores will range widely, massively. Some people you think might get a high score probably won't, and other people you think might not get a high score will.
So is there a knack to it? That's the question. The reason I asked that is because many years ago, when Nintendo Wii was a thing, I had a boxing match with my son, who was only like this big at the time. And there I was giving it all the moves, thinking I've got this. And he was just doing this, like absolutely kicked my butt, So is there a knack to the Powercube?
There's slight things. The more you kind of use the device, the better you can get a score. That's not necessarily learning how to cheat the device, because you can't really cheat it. It's got a big target in the middle. You hit that target as hard as you can, accurately into the center of the bag. There's no real way of cheating it as such. But once you start hitting something with full power, you will get better at hitting things with full power. There's no two ways about it. And because you've got a score in front of you, you got a score to chase. You can make all the little micro adjustments as you're hitting it, which is why it's such a good tool. But it's mainly throw a bit of weight at it. Hit it as hard as you can, dead center, and crush that box.
All right. Yeah. Well, that's. I think what we'll actually find is it'll crush a few egos.
Yeah. Definitely. It will. It does. I know on one of the last courses with the IKF, I took it, and there was a guy who was 2-3 times my size, and his scores weren't that good really, and I think he couldn't understand why he was not hitting such a good score, and I was hitting harder than him. It just goes to shows, but then it's a really good tool for actually honing power. Also, actually, there's lots of things we can do on it on a professional coaching level. We can track fighters, we can plot out their progression and stuff like that. Obviously, when we're doing that at the festival, it's just going to be kind of a fun thing to do and a bit of a hardest hitter competition. We can break it down into martial arts, like different martial arts. We can kind of break it down into those to kind of separate them, or we can break it down into certain techniques. So we can have just the overall hardest score, the hardest score for certain techniques on the day. So we can have things like that running.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Really
but just to clarify on that, because I don't want people to get confused, it is there is an element of fairground attraction to it, in the sense that it's great fun. You can have a good laugh with it. You can really get engaged with that. But also, it is a genuinely is a scientific tool that the absolute top elite level athletes use to maintain and improve standards. So all joking aside, it actually is an exceptional piece of kit. So and having access to that is going to be amazing for people to have a try at. Now you can you can actually take that around clubs and things. You can go to people's clubs and do all of that as well. We'll talk about that on the festival itself, but that's something for people to be aware of. So we're almost out of time here. So very quickly then, if people want to reach out to you before the festival, my friend, how can they do that?
Find me on Facebook, IKF CQB Bristol, Close Quarter Battle, IKF CQB Bristol. Check out the IKF, International Kapat Federation. Our logo comes up. Adam Davey on Facebook. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, fantastic. No, thank you for coming on and chatting today, and also for coming to the festival, my friend. Looking forward to seeing you there. So cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Matt. Bye.